Yo, what's up guys? Hope you're all doing well and enjoying the holidays. Today, I want to share an Ice Dragon build, or an Ice Wyvern build that is just perfect for endgame. One swipe of your wing can destroy the entire screen of mobs in a tier 15 fully juiced map. Not only does it have really good clear speed, but it has the ability to take on endgame bosses like most dragon builds can. I was playing the Wyvern for a few days and I felt like it was a bit clunky. It felt very painful going through the mapping, and then it didn't really pop off and open up until you hit the bosses. After tweaking a few things for the last few days and adding more ice abilities, it now can finally fully clear screens in tier 15 maps, and I'm having a ton of fun. So I want to share it. If you've been thinking about making a Wyvern build, hopefully you enjoy this one. Not only that, this build is really easy to play and really cheap to get going. The only required item is the pulsar and ring, the blue unique ring. This is the only thing you need on this build, and it's crazy how cheap this is. It's currently, if you wanted a really basic one that has this effect, enemies chilled can be shattered as though frozen. That's why we want this. You can get it for an exalted orb. So you don't need to do anything weird or suspicious with your Val Temple to farm divines. This is a very easy one to get going with. Okay, so we'll quickly talk about the mechanics of how we do the Ice Shatter. It's been in the game a long time. It's the standard Ice Shatter, Ice Herald, Pulsing Ring. People have been doing it for ages. I used it on my Wolf build, used it back when the monks were doing it in 0.1, and it's used the Herald of Ice. So the Herald of Ice here is, while active, shattering an enemy with a non-herald attack will cause a big icy blast that hits all enemies around it. Combine that with the Pulsar and Ring, and you don't have to freeze enemies, you just chill them, and then that can be treated as a shatter. So then you hit enemies once with an ice ability, and they just shatter, and it does all of the enemies on the screen. It's really fun, it feels fun to play, and it's huge damage all at once. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, well, you don't have any ice abilities because you're a Wyvern, and you would be correct. Now, originally, I tried to use the Lunar Blessing in here, but it didn't translate to the Wyvern abilities. It only worked when you were a werewolf. So I dropped that, and instead, we have one single support gem that does it all for us. We have Embitter. So support skills with hits causing all sorts of damage gained to be gained as extra cold. So if you have gain fire, gain lightning, it gains them as extra cold. So all the stuff on our gear, all the stuff on our passive tree, anywhere we have gain damage, we instead gain extra cold, which is how we can chill and freeze and shatter the enemies. Okay, so let's go over the skill gems. First up, we have Rend. Rend is our main ability. It's how we do the screen clear. It's our main source of like farm damage. And to get 5 sockets on Rend, just level up. As you level up and put on better talismans, they will have more. You'll get more sockets, and just level up, do that, and you'll get your 5 sockets. There's no other way to increase this with like the perfect jeweler's orbs. You can't do that. You just have to level up. So we go for rapid attacks. This lets us attack faster. We go for magnified area, so we have a bigger cone of attack. That's magnified area 2. We go for Batar's Vengeance. When you freeze a target, you gain a % of damage as cold for 20 seconds. We go for Rage 3, so that we gain rage on melee hit, and you gain attack speed when you're not at max rage, because we're not playing as like a shaman, we're not playing as like a werewolf. We're not going to hit that max rage very often, so we do get the attack speed all the time. And then we have the Embitter. Any gain extra damage of, we gain it as cold instead, which is really, really good for shattering the enemies. Then we have, well, let's talk about that later. We have Flame Breath. Flame Breath is our main boss destroyer. You can see we're on like 147 unbuffed, 147,000 unbuffed, which is huge. Now, some people prefer the Oil Barrage ability. If you do, use it. I prefer to fly in the air as a dragon and just melt everything. If you would rather use Oil Barrage, throw it in, go for it. But this is more than enough when you have the damage. Rapid attacks to get it in faster. Blazing Critical, gain damage as fire for 5 seconds on critically hitting an enemy. Because we're a Oracle, we critically hit all the time. We'll talk about that when we talk about the passive tree. But whenever you see critical hits, just know Oracles can critically hit, almost guaranteed. Then we have Momentum. After moving 2 meters during a single use of the spell, gain 40% more damage. Generally, if there is like an abyss opening over here, you'll just do this. There you go, you've moved 2 meters. All right, so you will always have that buff. You'll always gain that benefit from Flame Breath. Then we go for Burgeon. Support skills do 20% more damage per second spent channeling. This is it's called a channeling ability, so it works. If you're ever curious, hover over the gem, hold down like a button, and you can hover over them, and you can see here, it's a channeling ability. Then finally, we go for Elemental Armaments, 25% more elemental attack damage. Okay, then we got Pounce. Now for Pounce, 1, it's a movement ability. 2, when you land with Pounce, you mark an enemy. Now, generally when you mark that enemy, it will help you summon wolf minions. Instead, you would put a skill gem in here called Freezing Mark. This is very popular in the werewolf builds, but this just helps you build freeze up against enemies. So when you do land on an elite, land on a boss, you get an extra chance to freeze it, hit prime for freeze. it's very, very good for extra cold damage, and you get buff gains, damage gained as cold damage. So very, very useful. And with that, we use this combination here, Culmination 2 and Aelith's Chimes. Now, what this means is if you look at Culmination, as you're playing, you gain combo. You gain combo for this ability, and you'll have a number over Pounce. And as you're playing the game, this number will build up to 20. And then when you use Aelith's Chimes, you have a chance to gain a power charge when using combo points. So basically, play around the game. When you pounce, you'll use the combo points generated by Culmination, and that will have a chance to give you power charges. And power charges are very useful in this build. They have a chance to add lightning damage to your rend. You can see here it says consumes a power charge if possible to grant you a buff that gives you extra lightning damage, which is really, really nice. Similarly, you can use a power charge in your flame breath, consumes a power charge to empower the skill, gaining extra lightning damage, and spends rage more slowly. So getting power charges is very important, and this just gives us a passive way to do that. Next up, we have Ferocious Roar. Now, this is just a buff button. You press this, you gain a ton of buffs. So you turn into a bear, you gain a bunch of buffs, you do a war cry, and you can see here, it empowers you it powers one attack per enemy in range, so it counts up what's around you, and then empowers you based on how many's around you. You gain rage per empower, and you break armor based on this. So we go for echoing, so it doubles, it uses it again. We go for exposing to apply exposure, which is, if you don't know, you can hover over these, and exposure is just a way to, they take more elemental damage basically, so it lowers their total resistances so you can get more damage in. Then you go for the raging to gain rage, and then you go for magnified area so that when you're counting those enemies around you, I believe it will give you a bigger net to count those, to gain the power from, rather than just the ones directly around you. So it's just a big buff button really. Then Herald of Ice is our screen clear. We go for Elemental Armament 2 for 25% more damage. Long shot, so it does more to enemies further away. Magnified area for 45% increased area. Elemental Focus for more elemental damage. And then we finally go for Deadly Herald for 30% more damage. Beware with this one, this will cost more spirit, so it has additional spirit reservation of 20. If you don't have any spirit on your gear, you're struggling, you can see here we take this out, it's much more forgiving. If you put it in, it uses up a lot more spirit. So if you can't fit that one in, just wait till you've got more spirit, it's not needed, but it's more damage, right? And finally, Devour. This is how we gain power charges. You just jump on an enemy and gain a power charge. Jump on a low health or defeated enemy, gain a power charge. 25% increased attack speed. We go for a chance to gain an additional charge. We go for attacks gain lightning, chance on culling an enemy, and then you also get 40% increased shock chance with the Thrill 3. And then we go for Empowered Sparks 3, generating a power charge, empowers 3 attacks. So that's the setup I've gone for, and there's more room for improvement here. It's just, I'm finding the only ones I really needed to 5-star was Rend, Flame Breath, and Herald of Ice. Okay, so here's the passive tree, and I'm going to explain something super simple, assuming you've never played an Oracle. If you have, skip ahead maybe, but if you've never played an Oracle, they have this node here, walk the paths not taken. And what that means is you can see extra nodes on the passive tree that aren't there for anybody else. So if you're looking at this passive tree and going, whoa, there's more stuff on there than mine, that's that node down there. It's this node here. And all these blue squiggly lines, like with the little details around them, they are from this ability. And we take a few of them as well. We take a few of these. So, you know, if you see things that aren't on your tree that we've taken, like this up here, this diamond, there's really good damage on these nodes. So it's definitely worth getting. Now, additionally, we have this here, Entwined Realities, non-keystone passives in radius of, it's hard to understand what that means. Basically, what it means is when you have a key passive, which is, I'll show you on this one here, these things with like the detail around them, they are key passives. When you have a key passive, you can then allocate anything around it without chaining to it. So we can take this node here, which gives us 60% armor, 60% energy shield from our body armor, without doing these 3 here. So we're saving 3 passive points on things we don't need to get something we do. Similarly, we can get this one here without using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're saving points basically to get to these nodes. Over here, we took this one here, and it lets us take these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We gain 8 nodes from this without having to change them. So it's really, really useful for like getting tons of value out of your passive tree. And if you can take this further, there's another one here, there's another one here. The Druid is really is blessed with these key passives. They've got loads. So if you can make it work, you can find some really cool stuff in here. But that's what I've done. Feel free to change it if you see any others that you like the look of. But that's why there's just like nodes activated randomly around the screen. Especially if you're looking in like the build guide, you're going to think, what's going on? it's from this line here, right? The only other side of the Oracle tree is this one up here, where you would go up here for enemy critical hit chance is unlucky, damage to enemies hitting you is unlucky. So this is going to give you, protection against critical hits, pretty much. And then you come along to here and you get inevitable critical hits. Now, when people first saw this, they were like, oh, that looks strange. This is incredible. This is incredible. One of the best scaling damage methods at endgame is critical hit. Critical damage is one of the best ways to scale damage at endgame. And if we hover over this, you can see hits which could potentially be a critical hit, but do not hit, are re-rolled until they hit critical hit. So kind of like if you had a 50% chance to roll crit and you didn't, it would give you another go and then you would critically hit. And then how many times you miss that roll, you will lose a bit of critical damage bonus. So you are always critically hitting, which means anything that says when you critically hit, that's just a guarantee basically, because you're always critically hitted. The more critical hit chance you have turns into more damage bonus because you're not getting punished by the reduced critical bonus. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, let me know. I'll try to explain it better in the future. Okay, so what I would suggest is start by going for your damage. Start coming up through the middle, attack damage. Our main ability is attack. If we hover over Rend is an attack. Hover over Flame Breath, it's also an attack. So get all of your attack stuff on this cluster here. Come up to here for increased damage, down here for increased armor, energy shield, up to here for critical damage bonus and area damage, increased crit chance and skill speed while shapeshifted, and armor, energy shield. All of this stuff is all really, really good in this build. Now, up here, we have tons of defensives, and I would go into that once you're hitting tier 15 maps. You've got increased movement speed, armor, energy shield, and then you've got increased energy shield and extra energy shield from helmet. You're not going to feel that big bonus until you're pushing like late game maps. So this would be like the end game stuff I would go into when you're like in the over at level 80 probably, like you start heading down there, or 75 plus. So to start with, I would go up here. Now, I've started adding like weapon swap tech to stuff, but I'll explain that as we go through. If you've never done weapon swap, the way it works is you can assign certain stuff to one weapon and certain stuff to the other, but we only use one weapon. So basically what you're doing is you're assigning your weapon swap to different abilities. So for Flame Breath, I have that set to weapon set 2. So whenever I pick up something on the tree that gives channeling, so for example, in here, we have like channeling skills deal increased damage, they will only activate when I use Flame Breath because Flame Breath is aligned to number 2. Whereas everything else will work for Rend and, Pounce and Herald Device and everything else assigned to weapon set 1. So yeah, that's something you can also do. If you don't care, you don't want to min-max that little bit of extra damage, then don't. But I'm going to talk about it. So we go down here, increased attack damage, increased attack damage for enemies in close range. I have them on weapon set 1. You don't have to. Up here, we have some extra channeling damage and channeling skills to 25% increased damage, increased stun threshold while channeling. All of that can go on weapon set 2, or ignore it if you don't want to do weapon switch. Come down to the middle, hit this gem. Come along here, you've got a big set of channeling stuff here for weapon set 2 if you want to do that. You've got increased critical hit chance here. You've got some stuff for attack damage, attack speed, movement speed, and attack damage here. You've got this cluster here, again, is channeling, increased stun threshold while channeling, and damage recouped as life while channeling. You can throw on weapon set 2, you can see here. Then we come down to here, and you would go right. You would get these lightning nodes, 30% increased damage with hits against shocked enemies, and increased damage with hits against chilled enemies, and all the elemental stuff near them. And then this big critical cluster here, critical hit damage, critical hit chance. Coming along here, you would grab all of these for increased critical hits along here. At the end, you would put a jewel socket. You'd come down, and I've got this on weapon set 1 down to here, where we have strike, steal, splash damage. Now, that just means that when we hit, we splash for more AoE. It like spreads a little AoE of extra damage on our attacks. Feels good. I've got that in my werewolf build too, and I could definitely feel it. So I put it in here as well. Now, as we come back to the gem socket, we then would go north. We would come up to here. We'd get this critical cluster here for increased critical damage. You would then go left and you would grab Lord of the Wilds. Now, why are we taking Lord of the Wilds? Now, I've wrote this in the build guide in a bit more detail if you want to read that. But basically, the reason we take this is you get 50% less spirit, but you can then equip a talisman in your second socket. What can we put on our talisman? We can put more spirit. So you can kind of get that spirit back. You can also gain like stats like index and stuff on your spirit, which is a nice little stat stick. But the second reason we're using this is because it lets us get to these skills for free. We can get this one here, 60% armor and 60% energy shield from our equipped body armor, which is huge. And then we get this one down here, 8% damage as extra cold while shapeshifted. So we're getting 2 really, really good nodes for free, which is you get the mana regen if you're struggling with mana. You could get increased life leech if you want to get that. So you can get some really good nodes for free just by taking this. If you don't want to do that at all, if you don't want to use the scepter, you don't agree that that's a good decision, drop that and just use 3 extra points to get to this and maybe skip that one. That's what I would suggest. Coming along to here, we would run all along here until we get to Ancestral Bond. It basically just changes how totems work, but we don't use totems. We're taking this key passive so we can take all of these really cool nodes around it. You've got faster recharge of energy shield. You've got extra damage as lightning while shapeshifted. You can take this one, increased elemental damage while shapeshifted, increased elemental damage 25% while shapeshifted, 35% increased physical damage. We've got down here 15% chance to treat enemy elemental resistance as inverted, which means if they have like 50% reverse, 50% elemental resistance, it flips, so you do 50% more damage. Kind of explained really simply. Then you've got 10% of extra physical. You've got 40% increased elemental damage if you've dealt a critical hit recently, and increased crit hit chance. You get tons of really good stuff here. Come along, get another gem socket, and then we go up this like Oracle special section here. Increased damage, go for what you want here. I went with lightning, and then you get here 30% increased fire, cold, lightning, chaos, physical, which is amazing because we are an elemental together build. So this is a really, really good node. That's where I am now, around level 90, and I'll throw like 10 more points somewhere on the build guide. Okay, let's talk about the gearing guide. So first up, let's talk damage. The ways to get damage comes from your talisman, your rings, and your hands. So on the talisman, you want to get as much damage as possible. Fire, cold, lightning are all great. So you can see here, I've got fire, cold, and lightning. You can get much better rolls. I've got 2, 5, and 3. You can get much better rolls here. So you want to get as much extra damage as you can as elemental damage. You're not interested in physical, you're interested in elemental damage, and then throw some sockets in for extra damage. You can go lightning, you can go cold, do whatever you want. I chuck lightning in. But cold would probably have more of an initial impact. Lightning would probably deal you better on bosses. So yeah, go for as much elemental damage as possible. You want attack speed on this as well if you can get it. And then you want the levels to all attack skills. I've got +5 on here, and you will feel that. That is, you know, your rend is an attack skill, and your flame breath is an attack skill. So you want to get levels to attack skills, and you're going to get a massive damage buff on both of those. You can also go for gain onslaught on hitting an enemy. That's a pretty good one to have. Mine's just like mana on enemies defeated as the extra thing on here, but yeah, it's in the build guide. I've given you like the perfect things to go for, but I'll explain it anyway. Then on the rings, number 1, you want the Pulsarin ring. This is enemies chilled by your hits could be shattered as though frozen, and you get an increase to cold damage, which you can see here, up to 30%. They're just a couple of exalteds on the market. Then here you want to get increased damage to enemy attacks on here if you can get it. I've gone for more resistances, but I would recommend getting more damage on here if you can get it, because again, our attacks are our abilities are attacks. So when you have like fire damage to attacks, cold damage to attacks, you are going to feel that. I went for like rarity resistances and all resistances because I felt like I had enough damage. But if you're struggling for damage, get more cold, fire, lightning damage to attacks on that. Similarly on the gloves, damage to attacks, cold, lightning, attack speed, max life, stuff like that. So that's where your attack is coming from. Now you have a choice on your defensives to go for armor, energy shield, or a bit of both. Now it makes sense to go for a bit of both, because if we go in our passive tree, we have all of these buffs down here, which are increased armor, increased energy shield, increased armor, increased energy shield. So you should kind of go for both. And then we have this node up here, which is 60% increased armor from body armor, 60% increased energy shield from body armor. So I would recommend going for energy shield and armor hybrid. The only exception to that is on your helmet, because this node here, 70% increased energy shield from your helmet. I would go for a pure energy shield helmet. So to summarize, energy shield helmet, a pure energy shield helmet, and then armor evasion everywhere else. Obviously, if you find the perfect item and it doesn't have it, fine, but try and get armor, energy shield everywhere else. Then stack out your resistances, cold, fire, lightning. I think mine are pretty much there. Yeah, mine are pretty much capped apart from a bit of chaos. And the other things are pretty obvious, like go for movement speed, try and get to 35 if you can. Get item rarity if you want to do more farming. Try and get some spirit on your chest if you want. I've got 40 extra that I'm not using, but you can go for extra if you want to try and use like bar skin, whatever it's called, the ability that gives you like armor and energy shield defensives. They're pretty good. And then the only other last thing is the amulet. On the amulet, you want to be getting all elemental resistances and increase global defenses. This is This one line here is incredibly powerful, so I'd go for increased global defenses if you can get it. It's a very, very, very nice one. I've gone for like double rarity, which is most of the value of that amulet. It's not even like a stat amulet. And then finally, if you choose to use it, you have the scepter. Now for the scepter, this is a good way to get some extra stats. This build needs intelligence, strength, and it needs dexterity. So if you're struggling, you can get some intelligence, dex, and stuff on there. You can also get some mana. I've got extra mana on there, stuff like that. And then the other part of this is you gain extra spirit. You're losing spirit with Lords of the Wild, and you get that back here. You see I'm at 126. Without it, I think I'm on a 77 because you have the spirit squish from that key passive. And then the last thing here is what scepter do you go for? I like the Omen Scepter because that gives us the ability Malice, and Malice applies critical weakness to enemies nearby, making them more susceptible to our critical hits, which is really, really, really nice. You can hover over it and read about it. But basically it says critical weakness causes hits against targets to have increased critical hit chance, stacking up to 20 times. So this is a really good way to just get more critical hits. And that's pretty much the build. That's pretty much everything there is to it. There's sockets in here, ignore them. These are just from, I just bought it like that. We don't have like the shaman bonded tech. This is for like a werewolf build. So ignore the socketed, whatever they are. Snake idols. That's pretty much everything. You can put more like energy shield, strength, iron runes in. You can put resistances in. But yeah, that's everything. Is there anything I've not mentioned? Maybe jewels. The only other thing is jewels, and you're going for things that you're probably already going to assume. If you had to guess, you could probably guess them. Elemental damage, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and increased damage with different abilities, or increased defenses. The ones I've got are increased energy shield, crit damage bonus, and elemental damage, and then skill speed while shapeshifted. I've got down here energy shield, critical hit damage, elemental damage are the ones I went for on there, and then finally critical hit damage, elemental damage, and energy shield. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Any questions, I'll try my best to answer. And if you have any recommendations of improving this, let me know. It's a really fun build, and I'm going to keep playing it for a while. So if you have any thoughts on this one, I'm all ears. But thank you for watching. Take care. Subscribe for more. Full build guide link down below. I'll catch you in the next one.